Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce to you a very special friend of the American GI Forum and of all veterans. State Senator Leticia Van De Putte currently serves as the chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Military Installations Committee, and I am here to tell you that she takes her job very seriously as she watches any and all legislation that may impact our veterans of Texas. This lady is a San Antonio treasurer that has served through 5 terms as state representative and is now in her 5th term as our state senator. She is a staunch advocate for children, quality of education, and of course our veterans. In addition to chairing the Veterans Affairs Committee, Senator Van De Putte also serves as member on the Senate Committee on Education, State Affairs, Business and Commerce, and she is the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Human Trafficking. Senator Leticia Van De Putte has received many awards and various prestigious awards, including Naleo's Edward Roybal Award and the Vietnam Veterans of America Legislator of the Year Award. In addition, Leticia was also chosen as one of Texas' top 10 legislators for her work on behalf of veterans and their families. And the Center for Policy Alternatives awarded her the prestigious Arthur S. Fleming Leadership Award. Yes, I could go on much longer on her awards and recognitions, but I would like to take a moment to recognize her for the work that she has done in support of our veterans and the National Veterans Outreach Program of the American GI Forum. Leticia has been a frequent guest at our Residential Center for Veterans, and she has listened to the input that the veterans provide her. She has authored special legislation that has set aside some special procurement opportunities from the state government for nonprofit organizations that agree to hire disabled veterans on their workforce. And she arranged a special donation of computers and printers that would serve our learning lab at the Residential Center for Veterans, and the lab now bears her name, the name in her honor. Senator Van De Putte has always been ready to assist the American GI Forum and the veterans we serve. She makes us proud. She is a definite leader in the state and in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, Senator Leticia Van De Putte.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias, buenas noches, thank you. Welcome to my hometown de San Antonio. I'm a 6th generation Tejana, but I was born in Washington State. Now my parents, Daniel and Isabel San Miguel, were born here, but I was born at Madigan Hospital, Fort Lewis, Tacoma, Washington. And so I want to welcome you to my hometown de San Antonio, where there are so many of you from different states, and I love this organization, had the opportunity to work with our GI Forum, and I'm so pleased to meet people here today de Puerto Rico, de Colorado, Nebraska, New Mexico. I think there's Californians here. And of course, mis tejanos. So thank you very much. You know, Texas is a little bit of everything. We're part of the South. And so what you will hear here in San Antonio particularly is, yes sir, no ma'am, please, thank you. If somebody sneezes, there's going to be 3 people that say God bless you. We're a little bit of the rugged West. You know, we really value that rugged individualism, the you pull yourself up from your bootstraps mentality, but we always know when neighbor needs to help neighbor. That's part of the West. And of course, you're in San Antonio with our beautiful Latino culture. Mi casa es su casa. Our hospitality industry and a warm and loving people. who for hundreds and hundreds of years have had this bicultural community. And so when you come really to San Antonio, my hometown, the greeting that I should give you is bienvenidos, y'all. And so I want to thank you. Our hidden wiring of our hospitality community are the men and women in the service industry. And I know that all of you appreciate this hotel, the conference, the planners, all that went into. But tonight, let us thank Juan Carlos and Carla Rocha, our banquet captains, and our servers tonight. Maria S., Erasmo, Jorge, Maria H., Maria J., Rogelio, David Rosa, Maria G., Omar, y Amelia. To our servers tonight who have served us. Thank you so much. I have had the grand opportunity to represent this beautiful city in the Texas legislature for almost 23 years. I'm a pharmacist by profession. Been a pharmacist for 34 years, and I got to live my dream, was to own my own pharmacy and medical clinics. Along the way, my husband, that we've been married to for 37 years, we had 6 children. I know you're saying, oh, she looks so young. No, let me tell you, we now have 6 nearly perfect grandchildren. That's the good stuff. And I want to tell you that my family is very much like yours. If you look at the history of our American GI Forum, it is because we have heroes in our families. If you go to my office in the Capitol, there is a big portrait of a family story. You see, my great-grandmother, Porfiria Estrada, fled violence in Mexico, 1910 revolutions. Just like we're seeing now. People and young children fleeing violence. She was from Guadalajara, and she made una promesa. Her 2 sons were born here, Nicolás y Juan. And that promesa was that if they came home safely from World War II, that she would go on her knees de su casa a la iglesia. Now their house is less than 1.5 miles from Oakwood here, if you go just to the west side of downtown. And luckily, Uncle Johnny came back from the Pacific. And Uncle Nick came back from the Eastern Front. In fact, my tío, Nicolás Estrada, my great-uncle, was the bailiff at the trials of Nuremberg. And you know, they never talked about it. Those generations in World War II, they never talked. But it was esa promesa. Because we know that it's not just the warrior that serves, it's the family. And Patsy, that's why it's so important for our auxiliary. It's the family. Well, esa promesa de mi bisabuelita came true. So the day came that she decided that she was going to crawl on her knees from her house to the church, about 9 blocks away. And the neighbors heard about it. And I heard this story all my life. That Wena went on her knees. But the neighbors and people kept coming outside, putting toallas and sheets, anything that they could find, so that she wouldn't bloody her knees. But she did. And it was in Thanksgiving. It was la promesa. That if you bring my son safely, I will do this. We know even today, our families are keeping that promesa. If you go to the Capitol office, it's the San Antonio Light, front page, May 8, 1945. And there's a picture de mi bisabuela de rodillas. And she has her mantilla because she was on her way to church. And on one side, holding one arm, is my mother. She was about 12 years old, and the other side, my tía Margarita. And it said, La Familia Estrada completes a promise. And they told him the story of what that was. You see, today's families are the same way. But unfortunately, there are some who've forgotten the promise to our warriors. As chair of the committee, I could never understand at the very beginning why our warriors, particularly in this conflict, in Afghanistan and Iraq, why they didn't say something when they came home. Why sometimes the most devastating wounds were the invisible wounds. And then I remembered about my father-in-law. My father-in-law is Henry Van De Putte. He is a Belgian-American. His family went to Belgium to Guatemala for 2 generations. And then his father went back to fight in World War I for Belgium. But they came to Brownsville, Texas for that American promise. My father-in-law raised on a dairy farm in Brownsville. Of course, the mother, Mimi, was French, and so they spoke French in the home, the mother tongue. Then they were on Brownsville, so you spoke Spanish. My father-in-law never learned English until he got to school. But he was on the USS Southampton at Iwo Jima, and Dad never said anything. He really didn't. Until one time that we went to the Museum of the Pacific. And if you ever get a chance to come back, and those of you that are Texans, go to Fredericksburg, to the Museum of the Pacific. It is a wonderful collection. It tells the story of World War II, that conflict in the Pacific. Well, we finally took him. We said, Dad, let's go. And there was a gentleman there that wanted to archive the stories, because it's very important for us to tell the story. And he didn't want to, but then because another warrior was asking him, he did. We listened. He told the story of Iwo Jima. At the end, we were astonished, in disbelief. And as we were walking out, my husband said, Dad, why didn't you ever tell us? Why didn't you ever tell us what had happened? And my father-in-law looked at him and he says, Mijo, we spoke Spanish, he says, Mijo, it wasn't that I didn't want you to know, or it wasn't that I didn't want your sisters to know. Your mother could never know. I never wanted her. She couldn't know how bad it was. You see, as a warrior, he was still trying to protect someone. And that's when I understood that these war veterans now are like that greatest generation. They come back home and they don't speak out. They have trouble admitting that, yes, I need help. Because guess what? They're still protecting someone. They won't talk to someone who isn't a warrior. And that's why I was so pleased when the GI Forum helped me secure the $12 million for our peer-to-peer network, so that warriors can talk to warriors, so that they can help them access mental health services, so that they can help them and their families with the invisible wounds. You know, thank you to our GI Forum who helped us. Thank you to our GI Forum, because all I ever have to do is make one phone call. Especially when we passed the constitutional amendment last November that has an exemption on property taxes. And for those of you that are not from Texas, we don't have a state income tax, so that means you have to go buy a bunch of stuff while you're here. We run on sales tax, but our local governments, our cities, our counties, and our school districts assess a property tax. And we passed a constitutional amendment. Thank you to our GI Forum who came and testified, and to the people of the state who voted for it. That constitutional amendment was approved in November, and what it said was that there would be no property taxes to the surviving spouse of someone killed in action. A small way to say thank you. We also had an amendment that I shepherded through, y'all testified as well and got votes back home, to have an exemption for our warriors who are wounded, who are gifted a home. Because what had happened is that our warriors, people all over the state were so good-hearted, they would build a home suited to that warrior. Right here in San Antonio, in Military City, USA, we have the Center for the Intrepid, San Antonio Medical Military Command Center, with over 65 of our wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq recuperating here in San Antonio. The Warrior and Family Support Center. And we know that they stay close by because this is where the medical work. It's our survival rates on the battlefield are greatly improved. Whereas before, they would have been tragically lost. We have a 95% survival rate if we could get our soldiers to the lot. But they come home with lifelong injuries and lots of surgeries. So when great organizations, like the one Tim has, and everyone here would get this home, and the warrior and their family could move in, retrofitted for that warrior's disabilities. But they couldn't pay the property taxes, and they were losing their home. Thanks to you and to the people of this state, that also passed. That if you have a wounded warrior who's been gifted a home, they don't have to pay those property taxes. But it's not just about what we do now. You see, when we say we need to serve our veterans, it's got to be more than just something on a bumper sticker. And I am glad that a GI Forum holds those who hold public office accountable. It's one thing to wrap yourself in a flag and say you support our troops and support our veterans, and then turn around and vote against the funding that gives services to our VA, that gives services of education to our veterans. You cannot let our politicians talk out of both sides of their mouth. Thank you, GI Forum, for holding them accountable. And most of all, for righting the wrongs. When you see an injustice, that's how this organization was formed. You right the wrong. Sometimes you question, is this the right way to do things? Sometimes people tell you, well, no, this is the right way to do things. But this organization has never let that status quo. You do what is right. And there's a big difference. You do what is right. And that means when somebody has been discriminated against, in voting rights, in civil rights, in employment rights, in educational rights, this is the group that says, ya basta, no more. Just like your proud heritage. And so this 66th anniversary, let me congratulate the men and women in this organization, the leaders you have. I might be the elected official, but you are indeed true public servants because you're in service to each other and to the generation of men and women who will pay the price so that you and I can live in freedom. I know that when I'm on that Senate floor and that those House members on the chamber, that we are there because of the price that has been paid. And just like our family is very similar to yours. The history of mi tío Nicolás, mi tío Johnny, my cousin Stephen, a chopper pilot in Vietnam, and this day we pray for my nephew, Major Jason Murray, who's on yet another tour in Afghanistan. We pray, we keep that promesa. We say, ay Diosito, cuídalo. Bring him home safely. And each in our hearts we make that promise. But collectively, the GI Forum can show the rest of the country not just how to make the promise, but to honor la promesa. Muchísimas gracias, que Diosito te bendiga. Have safe travel back home. Congratulations, our GI Forum.
Una promesa que podemos hacer hoy: esta es tu casa. En cualquier momento que quiera venir, está bienvenida. Y te voy a dar las gracias por venir a hablar con nosotros y hablar de una forma muy elegante. Y en este momento te quiero otorgar una medalla como de la American Yard Forum, que representa como una medalla de la Olimpiada. Y esta medalla es solamente representando a todos los miembros de nuestra comunidad de la American Yard Forum, los 14 estados que tenemos aquí en Yard Forum, desde Washington DC to Washington State, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, and many, many others. On behalf of the American Yard Forum United States and all the chapters and states across the country, it's an honor for me to give you this gold medal. Please come forward. Every time you go to your office.
Gracias. Gracias. No, gracias.
Y esa es la promesa que te tenemos. Esta es tu casa todo el tiempo. Thank you.